Hello dear viewer, welcome to this episode. And this episode we wanted to look at the muscles that originate from the humerus and then make their insertion onto the two bones of the forearm, that's the ulna and radius. And we have looked at muscles that originate from the scapula and then make the insertion onto the humerus, that is the previous episode. Now in this episode, let's look at origin, insertion, and then the action of only muscles that either originate from the humerus and make their insertion onto the two bones, either ulna or the radius. And in simple terms, all these muscles have their action towards what we call the elbow joint. If not the elbow joint, then their action will be towards the forearm, because those are the bones that they attach onto. And the first muscle we begin with is known as the brachialis muscle. So this is brachialis. Where does brachialis originate? So this will originate from the front lower aspect, or front lower half of the humerus. So when it originates from there, it makes its insertion onto what we call the coronoid process. The coronoid process. This is of ulna. Now what's the function of this? It's very important muscle in what we call flexion of the elbow. So it helps in flexion of elbow. Yes, that's very good. Another muscle is also known as the brachioradialis. Brachioradialis. So brachioradialis, brachio meaning brachium, the arm, then radialis meaning the radius. So combine the two names and name the muscle as brachioradialis. So where does this originate? It originates from what we call the lateral supracondylar condylar ridge. And where does it insert to? So when you look at brachialis, makes its insertion onto what we call the lateral distal end of radius. And what's the action of this muscle? The brachioradialis muscle is very important in flexion of the elbow, or flexion of elbow. Then another muscle is known as anconius. Anconius is a small muscle that originates from the lateral epicondyle. This is of the humerus. Lateral epicondyle. And where does it make its insertion into? Onto the olecranon process. Olecranon process of the ulna. And what's its purpose of anconius? Anconius is responsible for extension, or it does extension of elbow. Then the last muscle for us to look at is known as the pronata teres. Now many people get confused, where does pronata teres originate? But pronata teres simply has two heads, that's the humeral head and then the ulnar head. Now in this case we look at the humeral head. It simply originates from what we call the medial epicondyle, and this medial epicondyle is of the humerus. Then where does it insert to? The pronata teres inserts onto the lateral aspect of the radius. So it inserts on the lateral aspect of the radius, and simply like the word pronata, it's responsible for pronation of the forearm. So we have pronation of forearm, and then sometimes it can help in flexion of forearm, forearm. Now there are two muscles that we are leaving out in all our episodes, and that's the biceps and then the triceps. But the biceps and triceps simply make their origin like the triceps has some of its lateral and medial heads originating from the humerus. Then the other head originating from the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. But then it does not insert on this and does not make an insertion onto the humerus. So you find that the head originates from the coracle, from the scapula, and then makes its insertion onto the olecranon process of the ulna, meaning there is no origin, or we don't consider it among the muscles that specifically originate from the humerus and then make their insertion onto the two bones of the forearm, that's the ulna and the radius. Then when you consider biceps, two heads, one head originating from the coracoid process of the scapula, and then the other head originating from the supraglenoid tubercle, that is of the scapula, then forms the barrier around the middle shaft of the humerus, but simply makes the insertion onto the radiotuberosity, that is by its bicipital aponeurosis. Wait in the next episode. Just in the next episode, we will speak about muscles that originate from the bones of the forearm, the distal end of the humerus, and then they make their insertion onto the metacarpals, the carpal bones, interphalanges, and so on. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time.